Hi guys, I hope everybody's doing great. This is AdeLA. I am a singer, rapper, songwriter, and something that's really important to me is having great mental health. So I'm here with my friend Mandy. She'll introduce herself in a second, and we are going to start a series just to kind of discuss mental health and how it affects creatives. But for the time being, we thought, well, let's use what's going on around us, our current environment, which is the COVID-19 pandemic, and let's kind of like unpack how people are feeling. So Mandy, thank you for being here. I'm so excited.
Me too. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm Mandy Morris, and I am an LPC, licensed professional counselor, co-founder and co-director of MOSAIC Counseling Group, which was founded in 2014. And I use all evidence-based techniques in my training. So I do eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's a really long phrase, but it's a trauma training that I'm certified in, as well as some other cognitive behavioral therapies, art, and expressive therapies as well. So that's just a little bit about my background. So with everything that's going on, and I'm really excited to be able to talk about this with you, AdeLA, I wanted to check in with you first, as I do with everybody. And how have you been doing?
This has been interesting, and I guess not just for me, for the entire world. We are experiencing a pandemic, which who would have ever thought?
Right? Yeah.
And it's been a roller coaster for me. I'm going to be honest with you. It seems like one day is really great. I'm super productive and I'm like, things are going to be fine. My day is just flowing. And then the next day it'll hit me like a ton of bricks where I'm like, we're going to die. This is it. I lived a great life. It's over. And, I laugh about it now because obviously today's a better day, but like just yesterday,
Right.
it wasn't a great day for me.
Yeah, and that is so normal. Everybody's experiencing that. And there's two parts to why everybody's experiencing it. But first, I just want you to know that this is a normal reaction that you're having, because the last thing people need to do is try to convince themselves that they shouldn't be feeling the way that they're feeling, or be overreactive to it. So there are two pieces going on here. First is grief. And we're all having this sort of collective grief response. And grief at its minimum is defined as the loss of something familiar. And so when we're used to familiarity, our brain knows what to expect and how to predict it. And there's not a lot of emotional distress. But like for you, AdeLA, I know you had concerts and flights and all these meetings and these gatherings and all these things that you were going to go to this year. And then within a matter of a couple weeks, you were having to cancel everything, right?
Yeah, it's two parts to that. When you say first of all, I had a schedule even when I was home. It was like, I would go to yoga. That would kind of start my day. I'd walk the dogs, go to yoga, and then I'd come back and I'd be in the studio. And there was, a schedule that I ran by. And then on top of that, I did, having South by Southwest and having all these writing opportunities and show opportunities kind of fall off one at a time. And you're like, okay, well, this is just temporary. And now it's grown into this, like, I'm not sure when we're going back to normal.
Right. And so that loss of that predictability, which is what you're talking about, our brain doesn't know how to compute it. And so we get flooded by emotions, and we get flooded by sadness, anger, anxiety, fear. And those are all normal reactions too. And I think just the awareness around it is important, because for this piece of it, with grief, you have to move through the feelings. A lot of people try to numb their feelings by overbusying themselves or in other ways, or watching 12 hours of Netflix just to not deal with what they're feeling. And it's important to be able to feel those emotions, by talking it out with Nick or a friend, or in journaling and things like that. But the other piece of all of this, when you were talking about just kind of having those extreme responses, some days are good, some days are bad, some days you think the world is ending and other days are okay, is that this is a different type of stress than we're used to. So typical stress And we need a little bit of stress in our life to actually be productive, which is a good thing. But normal stress would be like pressure from your boss or your producer or that deadline or whatever it is. But this is activating our stress survival response. So this is activating this instinctual programming in our brain called the fight or flight system that is telling us we need to survive.
Right.
And so what happens is when that part of the brain gets activated, it releases cortisol, which is the stress hormone, adrenaline, and norepinephrine. These are all part of that mechanism to help you to survive. And typically, if we were back in like caveman days running from a bear,
right,
we would run, our adrenaline would help us be safe, and then it would die down and we would be able to recalibrate and start to function again as normal. So, but in this circumstance, whenever we turn on the news, whenever we hear that shelter in place is extended, whenever we hear something new that threatens our mind's thought of survival, all the same chemical reactions happen in our body. And so that anxiety really starts to flare up again, and all that uncertainty and all that fear. So that's why people are experiencing those wide range of emotions, and really why I'm encouraging people to begin to find some predictability in their day, and stay focused on the day. Really practicing mindfulness techniques of the here and now, because we got to get those adrenaline levels and those cortisol levels down.
So a couple things that I kind of, you're the expert, I'm just winging it here. But a couple things that I feel like that's helped me is I've been setting a daily reminder for myself just right in my iPhone before I go to bed. I give myself like a list of tasks that I have to accomplish the next day. And some of them are obviously big, like, okay, you need to record this song for such and such, or you need to finish this verse, or whatever that may be. But then, I mean, my list starts with wake up, get dressed.
Yes.
Because I was doing like I'm in the jammies all day long.
Yeah.
And I am not motivated to do a single thing. And then a second thing I do is I am trying to limit my news intake. And the way I'm doing that is, rather than like going to Google and just putting in a very broad topic, I am using just one news source, because there's only so much updating that one news source is going to do in one day. And their information is obviously not going to be as conflicting as if I, just start searching every single news source there is on what's going on with this pandemic. And then I try to like share in some of like the positive news, like I try to search that out a little bit, like, well, what's good that's happening.
No, those are all such good things that you're doing, and I'm so proud of you for listening to your own intuition with that. It's almost like we get to a point of you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, so you start to structure yourself, and that's exactly what you did. And so you're actually talking about a couple of things that are really important for people to be doing right now, which is creating a structure and a rhythm, and creating boundaries. So that to-do list that you were talking about and scheduling out your next day, that is so important, because our body needs rhythm again in our life. So that routine you used to have where you woke up and you went to yoga and then you did X, Y, and Z, that became a rhythm in your life. And our body needs that. It creates a sense of predictability. It creates a sense of security and calmness, especially in times of uncertainty when really we can't plan our days past the next day. Having that is going to help you feel more calm, more in control. And then, totally having boundaries around the news. So I'm also telling people 1 to 2 sources, that is it. And make sure you have boundaries around when you're watching it. You don't want to watch a scary movie before you go to bed. You're going to have bad dreams, right? So don't watch the news right before you go to bed. Have some times where you check in on your reliable sources, stick to those, and then get into problem solving mode. So this is super important. What tends to happen is that we get this intake of information about the pandemic. naturally we get anxious about it.
Right.
And then we just worry. And that worrying is then going to start to activate anxiety in the body, because we know that anxious thoughts can activate more cortisol and adrenaline and all of that.
Right.
So instead, get into problem solving mode. All you have to do is ask yourself, or if you're with your family, ask your family, okay, with this information that we heard, is there anything we need to be doing differently? If the answer is no, table it. Put it aside, get back to your day. Get back to your to-do list, whatever you were going to do that afternoon. If there is something that you need to do differently because of information, go ahead and get that plan in place, and then table it again. Because then otherwise it can be all consuming. So those are really good things you've begun to do. And I especially love that piece in the beginning where you said that you get up and you start getting dressed again. That is so important, because you're now creating almost a boundary for yourself that I'm still going to live my life today and
Right.
be productive. I'm encouraging people to still pick out their cute outfits. Wear them around the house, put some
Right.
makeup on. If you work from home, I know, AdeLA, you naturally are able to have a physical boundary in your place,
Right.
which is your studio and your loft, which is great. If people don't have a specific area to do their work and they're working from home now, create a separate physical space. Even if you have to put a divider up and that becomes workspace, that way your mind can know, I'm going to be productive right now, and then when I get out of that space,
Right.
then I have my play space, I have my relaxation space. Having those boundaries of separation helps things feel way less chaotic. I know one thing that I do is when because I always wear my watch at work. It helps me keep track of my sessions. And so as soon as I'm done with my sessions for the day at home, I take my watch off like I would when I came home. And that's just kind of my cue. So all those little things are really good tips to help create some stability.
And it's like, just because right now it's like, for me, yes, I have this space, I have my studio that I go to, and but even still, it's like, just you're going from the couch to the bed,
Right.
to the couch to the bed. So I love that whole setting boundaries. Like, I guess for people that work from home, even if it's at like the dining room table, most people don't even use their dining room tables anymore. But yeah, if it's at the dining room table, a spare room somewhere in their space, that is a separate boundary. One question that I do have, I have notes here. I'm seeing a lot of things circulate on the internet saying, now is the time. Like, whatever dream you wanted or whatever goal you wanted to accomplish, now is the time. All we have is time, and if you don't do it now, you weren't serious about it. And, myself as a creative, I have a ton of stuff I would love to accomplish. I have a ton of goals that, I set for myself. But just a month ago, I was not thinking about possibly dying. I was not thinking about people on ventilators and is my 87-year-old grandma going to be okay in this pandemic? My stressors were totally different.
Right. Yeah, that's I know exactly those messages going around. I hear them as well. And yeah, that's real nice in theory, but not when we're in a state of crisis, because our brains are operating completely differently. That's a very unrealistic expectation of ourselves right now. I think that as you begin to establish good coping skills and normalize your days a little bit, there's going to be creative moments possible, and we can get more into that. But I really want to touch on what's happening in the brain, because that message is going to send unneeded pressure and unrealistic expectations for creatives right now, or people who are trying to be super productive and feel like they can't. Is so like what, like when you're in your creativity and when you are, doing decision making and problem solving, all of our rational thinking, that's all up here. This is in this frontal part of our lobe. Okay. So when we're in crisis and stress mode, and we're in our survival response, we're in this back part of our brain. All your energy is going back there. And so this part goes offline when we're under stress, especially this kind of stress. And so that expectation is a very unrealistic one. And I think that everybody has to take a step back personally and manage their own expectations for themselves. What is realistic of you right now? And what can you do in place to begin some self-care and make that the priority? Because the work and production of things and the creativity is going to come as you begin to create a sense of normalcy, but that's not going to happen right away.
So, and then this like leads me to another question. Is it okay to maybe have those days where you're just like, that's it, I am hitting the off button and I'm not turning it on today? And then if you do that, at what point is it like, okay, I'm going too far? Like, obviously one day, you know, every now and then we all probably need that. But at what point does it become like, okay, this is not healthy for me now?
That's a great question and a hard balance to find. So bottom line is that if you don't make your body relax, it's going to make you relax. So if you haven't been able to decompress or have a structure in place for that throughout the days, so to speak, then your body's going to make you shut down. And that's where you reach that point of, I got to turn it all off. And I do think having detox days of no media, of no expectations, of no to-do list is really good mental health, because we actually become more productive and creative after rest days, because our mind need to rest. So it's the same thing as working out muscles. You have to have a rest day so all the fibers can form and be stronger. Same thing happens in our mind. Now, the balance is what is too far, right?
Right.
You know you're going too far if that you're not connecting with people anymore, and now taking a break turns into isolation.
Okay.
You know you're going too far if you're not taking good care of eating well and still getting some exercise. Like, those basic self-care needs aren't happening anymore, because usually the first things to go are the basic, like, hygienes, essentially. Not showering anymore, I'm not connecting with people, I'm not eating well, and it's usually a slow decline. So you really have to check in with yourself, or have someone check in with you. Hey, how are you doing? Did you get out of your pajamas today? Type of thing, to have a little accountability for that. And also, if you notice that you're starting to not care anymore, or you're in some negative thinking patterns, that's going to be another sign that you may need to reach out to somebody for some help, or you need to, in spite of how you feel, get back to what you were doing.
Right. And so now, next question, and this is a totally legitimate question. What happens? I mean, we're in this pandemic, and maybe there's some people that, you know, have been dealing with anxiety their entire life. I'm one of those people. So I obviously have tools to manage some of this, because it's been happening to me for a long time. I've seen, you know, my doctor about it and things like that. Now, what happens if you're like, all of a sudden, this situation, this lockdown, this quarantine, this news cycle, seeing people dying, all of a sudden it's triggered you, and now you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to deal. And to add to this, like, just shit show, for lack of better words, you don't have health insurance.
Right.
Which a lot of creatives do not.
Right. Yeah, great question. So, you know, with a lot of anxiety and anxiety disorders, not even related to the pandemic, those come from a lot of irrational fears and worries, where our mind takes them as a low probability, makes them high probability. And anxiety is really a lot of disordered thinking around uncertainty. So, you know, that's a separate thing that has treatment of in and of itself. But now we're faced with the fact that this is legit, rational fears and worries. And so it's important to really face your fears with what's going on, and get a plan in place. So, you know, with irrational fears, we have to kind of challenge them and become comfortable with uncertainty and things like that. In this case, I'm really encouraging people to get a plan in place for what their fear are, and the fear is getting sick, right?
Yeah.
So that's the big fear. So I want everyone to think about, okay, what would I do if this happens, and like literally write your plan down or talk it out with who you're living with. So what am I going to do to manage symptoms? Who am I going to call if I don't have a doctor? All right, what are some of my free resources out there? Let me give a call to my local, CVS or Walgreens, and ask them, what do I do? Who do I get in touch with? Help develop a plan for yourself by doing some research, getting some resources in place. Go ahead and get everything you need in case you need to manage symptoms at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is the breaking point for when do I call a doctor? When a fever hits, this is who I'm going to call, and then from there, I'll take those next steps for what they advise me to do, and get that plan in place. Also, so once the plan is in place, though, that's the time to table it, because the difference between, really addressing anxiety and then managing unnecessary anxiety is then managing worry, because those obsessive thoughts about getting sick when you already have a plan in place is only going to activate that anxiety response in you even more and make you feel worse. And that actually can affect your immune system. And
Right.
so from that point, you really practice on staying in the day, reminding yourself you have a plan, redirecting obsessive or worry thoughts, because that's not going to help you physically or mentally at all. And then the other part to answer that question is that there are lots of services available. So everything is virtual right now.
Right.
We have teletherapy options, telehealth options. There's free support groups that are virtual. Psychology Today is a website that is for mental health professionals, psychiatrists, doctors, support groups of various mental health issues. And if you go to that page and you literally type in what you're looking for, like a therapist in your area. So you would just type that in, type your zip code. Really, zip code doesn't matter right now, though.
Right.
Because everything's virtual. So this is a time to really get extra support. It's not a time to be afraid to reach out because of anxiety or out of fear because you don't have money, or you don't have insurance. There's lots of, like I said, free support groups out there as well, especially like AA, NA, Al-Anon. There's domestic violence support groups out there, all sorts of resources available. And even with certain therapists, I know a lot of them do sliding fee scales. A lot of them offer pro bono slots. You just got to inquire about it as well, so that you can get the help that you need. But it's actually a really good time because so much is more available at our fingertips than it was before.
Right. And I think that, as somebody that deals with this, like that deals with the anxiety and like the compulsive thoughts, sometimes you can't shut them down. And, you can, your tool bag could be completely full, and, you know exactly what you need to do, that rational part of your brain. But it's kind of like when people say, like, just get over it. Like, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to have anxiety. I don't want to worry. But, it's obviously, I've learned that, I lack a certain chemical in my brain that is not kicking in maybe like someone else would. And I don't want to use the word normal, because I think what is normal, we're all normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so it's just also what I find too is talking to friends, because right now, not only are we in this pandemic and we have no control over it, but then there's so many other external circumstances that we don't have control. Like I've been myself Googling pollen allergies versus COVID-19 every day. I think every single day last week, I Googled that. And, I have no control over the pollen. I have no control over the seasons, but that's something that is, I wake up some mornings and I don't feel great and my throat is scratchy and I'm like, oh my God, is it time? Is it, like, do
Right.
I need to call a doctor? And, even
Now
though,
the obsessive thoughts start to go then.
yes,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, like I said, Google is a dangerous
Yeah.
place because, by the time I'm done, not only do I have COVID, but I also have like
Right.
brain cancer and a possible, on the verge of a possible heart attack. So this doesn't add to,
Right.
mental stability
Yeah.
in this situation.
Yeah.
But asking you, this is totally normal, right?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
well, okay, it's totally normal, and kind of my rule number one, even with my clients, is don't WebMD yourself, like, because you're gonna have the worst of worst case scenarios. But let me say this: so, in research of pandemics, actually, one of the things that happens to the people experiencing the pandemic is a hyper sense of awareness around
Right.
body sensations. So that cough that you normally would disregard or didn't even know that you did, it's almost like a trauma response. We are so aware of every tickle in
Yeah.
our throat, and that's normal. So just know that it's normal, and just the awareness around that, you can be like, okay, I'm just in like hyperdrive mode right now. And then do some evidence checking. So always with obsessive thinking and worrying, whenever fear is driving the show, always balance that with some evidence checking.
Right.
So,
Okay.
like, for instance, I have a cough. I have corona. I'm gonna die. Okay. So, what's the evidence that that you have this and that you're going to die? And so then you just start going through some evidence-based checking. Okay. Well, do I have a fever? No. Am I showing these other symptoms? No. Okay, so what else could a cough be? Cough could also be pollen. It could also be. So now you're just kind of going into fact finding, evidence checking. It helps balance the fear,
Right.
so that you can kind of get out of that a little bit. And then if it does start to grow into something more, then you just continue to evidence check to get into problem solving mode. The other thing too is, all right, even if you have evidence that this, like, you do have a fever, let's say,
Okay.
or you do feel terrible that day, maybe it's allergies, maybe it's not. So will freaking out right now, so do I have evidence enough to freak out? If the answer is no, then don't freak out. If the answer is yes, I do, I have evidence to freak out, will freaking out help me? No. Okay. So then, all right. So then you get into problem solving mode again, and I love those.
Like, how do you stop the freak out? Because,
Right.
Mandy, I love you and you're the expert, but it is so much easier said than done.
Oh, totally. Totally. Well, I'm about to get into that. So you're just doing the evidence checking just helps you get into the problem solving part of your brain.
Right.
When we are freaking out, so to speak, or really just having an anxiety attack about our thoughts, you're in a different part of your brain. So you need to start thinking, you need to start processing. And from there, you begin to get your attention off of your thoughts and onto your body. So notice where you feel the tightness in your chest. Start to do some breathing. Notice where your shoulders are all tight and jacked up. Drop them. Like, AdeLA, drop your shoulders right now. Yeah, so just drop your shoulders, relax into your body some, start to get those cortisol and adrenaline levels to calm down, and then from there, continue to do some of those helpful, positive thoughts and thinking patterns, and then at that point, reach out to somebody, connect, externalize what's going on in your brain. What's going to make it worse is if you keep it inside and you're just obsessing and mulling, obsessing.
100%. As someone that has crazy anxiety, I find healing in talking something to death.
Yes.
And which sucks for the people around me that have to hear it. But like, eventually I feel like I've talked about it enough that like I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Right.
And I'm like,
and then you feel better. Exactly. So I have to do the same thing. I have to practice what I preach to my clients. So here's what I do. I call it telling on myself. So I say to my, person who I'm talking to, all right, I totally have to tell on myself right now. and I tell them all of the obsessiveness that's going on in my mind just to externalize it. I don't need you to fix it. I need you to listen, and I need to
get it out.
off, and I need us just kind of go back and forth about it until I get to a place of clarity and relief. And so that's super important to be able to do.
So my next question is, because obviously we know, you know, I saw this great quote. It's like, you know, we're all staying apart together.
Yeah.
You know, and it's such a great thing. And obviously we're all quarantining ourselves and we're social distancing, but as humans, as much as we think that we all live in our little corner of the world and that's it, we do not. I am a total extrovert, so maybe I'm like speaking on behalf of my people, but I like to be at the grocery store and say hi to people. I am that annoying human being that will, like, you know, walk by your, you know, you in, like, let's say the store and see something I really love in your cart and go, oh my God, yes, I love that. That works great. And I'm sure to some people that's really irritating, but it's how I, you know, how I live. And even something as small as, like, when I walk the dogs and, like, people are, you know, we're all having to, like, go to the opposite ends of the street, and it's so unnatural. And this time is so apparent that we are a community and we depend on each other, and this feels very unnatural to me.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And it's such a weird dynamic, because now we have this, like, even when we're passing by people, you know, and we have to stay 6 feet apart, there's this invisible boundary that goes up, and it feels off and it feels weird. And yes, for extroverts, this is like your nightmare. For introverts, this is kind of like, some of them are like, oh, this is my dream, but really only to an extent, because we're wired for connection.
Yes.
Connection it's literally, our need for it is in the same part of our brain that the drive for hunger and thirst is in.
I did not know that.
That's how much we are truly on a biological level wired for connection. And so social distancing has to happen, but we can't isolate. That's where having a support system in place, for you to be checking in on your friends and them checking in on you, or making, you know, with the people who you miss seeing the most, make coffee dates, make, you know, a game night with your bestie still virtually, you know, having these interactions, even though they feel different, it's still so important to have, because, you know, that's a part of the grief in all of this, is that we're missing those people that we love. And so really making sure that you don't let that slip away just because we're not allowed to be together. The bad thing about it is that we have to be extra intentional, which means it's going to take a little more effort to connect, but you have to do it.
Yes. I mean, you know, looking at the data, and, you know, I come from a science background. Obviously, the social distancing is working. That's the good news here. You know, we all have to like stay strong and just keep going. And, you know, eventually we're gonna beat this, right? We've got the entire world working on it. And I kind of look at it like that, you know, scientists are working faster than I've ever seen them work on anything. You know, because everybody's doing this together. So I guess, you know, it kind of makes me a little bit sad and concerned for people that live alone.
Yeah.
Because that's really tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those people, it's going to be really important that they're listening to themselves about what they need to feel safe and secure. It's easy for people who live by themselves, especially during this time, to feel like, oh, I don't want to be a burden to so-and-so. I don't want to keep reaching out to that person, or, you know, but really, this isn't a time to get into any of those fears about that, even though that can be a worry sometimes. But to really just listen to yourself is what's going to make me feel safe and secure while I'm having to be alone in the midst of the pandemic. And that may be asking certain people to check in on you at certain times of the day. That may be having set things planned. I would really advise having set things planned that you have to look forward to. Like, okay, Wednesday is coffee date with Bob, and then Friday I'm going to do a game night with the girls and see who wants to do that, get that set up. So you have the things you're looking forward to socially, but then you also have people checking in on you each day and that you are checking in on as well, just so that you don't feel like you're being lost under the radar somehow.
I also saw on the internet, a lot of people are fostering and adopting pets right now.
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
so great. It's
Yeah.
perfect companionship.
Yes. Oh, that would be great for people living alone right now, or even people who are struggling with relationship stuff. And, you know, maybe they're in a toxic relationship and one of them feels like they want to get a pet for themselves. That's also a really good therapeutic thing to do to help distract in a good way, but also gives you purpose. It gives you meaning and provides that comfort too. And I love that people are doing that.
Yeah, I think some shelters are like empty right now,
Oh, wow. Really? I didn't know that.
which is great, you know.
Yeah, that's so good.
So I have one more question.
Okay.
PTSD. How are we all going to get out of this in the end?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish I could predict the future and be a fortune teller, but I cannot. So, you know, we don't know what the future is going to look like. And right now, a lot of trauma experts are kind of calling this preliminary trauma, not that we're all going to get PTSD. So that is not what I'm saying, but we know that there's certain precursors that can happen if there's going to be any sort of PTSD or post-traumatic stress after this, because this is considered a traumatic event.
Right.
So some of that is we have a lack of predictability right now. We feel unsafe. There's in lots of ways with our health, but also financially. And so the more you can create predictability in your life, like we were talking about earlier with getting a structure and a routine, the more you can create a sense of safety and security within yourself, getting support systems in place, the better it's going to be for you long-term psychologically. And at the end of the day, though, you know, we never saw this coming to the extent in which it happened. And yet here we are and we've adapted, right? So we are adaptable beings. And so with whatever our new normal ends up looking like, we are going to be able to adapt to that as well. And so I think, because another big part of what creates trauma is if a negative belief is formed about yourself. So if you believe, you know, that I'm responsible for everything, or I failed, or I'm powerless, or I'm helpless, that actually is a part of what can create trauma is believing a negative belief like that, instead of something like, I know how to get my needs met, I'm resourceful, I can control what I can, and you operate out of that. So it's a really conscious thing of telling yourself those accurate adaptive beliefs, and really leading into that in the next phase of whatever our new normal ends up looking like. So just some things to kind of think about preemptively as we continue to move through is continue to create predictability, a sense of safety and security, whatever that means for you. You have to really dig deep on a personal level. This is not a prescriptive thing for everybody. It's very individualized.
Right.
Kind of the thing I'm throwing out there to all my clients is this is the same storm, different boats. This is affecting everybody on a different level, depending on your life circumstance. And so really creating a sense of self-care, sense of security, predictability, and then reminding yourself of those healthy, positive beliefs about yourself.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and I love that same storm, different boats, because when I think about, you know, my situation, for example, and, you know, I'm not ashamed that I have anxiety and, you know, and I have compulsive thoughts, and that's to me, that's my normal. But I also have to remind myself how lucky I am, because right
Yes.
now I have a roof over my head, and, I've got food in the fridge, and
Yeah.
um, I've got my health. And
Yeah.
it's so tough when I think about, for people that, families that you've got people that are out of jobs, and everything looks so uncertain for them, or
Yeah.
I don't know. So I guess what I want, and I think we both want this out of today's session, an
Mm-hmm.
episode, is just for everybody to understand that, like, your feelings are your feelings, they're
Yeah.
normal. And then, is there, I guess what we are going to do is we can put some resources at
Yeah.
the bottom of this video, and for people to reach out, because now is the time. We're all on an even playing field. We're all going through the same thing. Who would have thought, like, the entire world
Right.
would be experiencing this invisible monster? But we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, we will definitely put some resources that have the teletherapy links and support groups. And I really loved what you were saying, AdeLA, because right now the most healing thing we can all do for each other is the gift of empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and really just empathizing with one another and what we're going through. So we are gonna be able to heal each other just by being able to empathize.
Right. And just be kind. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
just that little bit goes so far in life in general.
Hmm.
Um, One more question.
Okay.
Well, where did the toilet paper shortage come from, as our expert in the way the mind works?
I never knew that coughing required so much toilet paper, but this speaks to, psychologically, this
Right.
speaks to that when people are in panic mode, we take desperate measures. And so for whatever reason, toilet paper creates a great deal of sense of security within us that we never knew. But apparently it does. And so that desperation seemed to, I don't know, take over in the toilet paper aisle.
I mean, it's good that we can laugh about at least something in
Yeah.
all of this, right?
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
will never get tired of the toilet paper memes, that's for sure.
yeah. I mean, it's like, I couldn't figure that out. I'm like, there's got to be a little psychological aspect there. And then obviously, it became like this herd mentality of, I mean, it
Yep.
just spread around the world. Like, we're
Yep.
in a worldwide shortage of toilet paper.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
like in the most insane thing.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Now when our survival senses are off, and we're needing to, get all of our needs met, and we're in panic mode, we do desperate things. And so, that's where
And apparently a
hysteria.
little bit irrational as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It is. And it's very about self. So that's why, if we can keep the hysteria down, we can keep the panic down, we're going to be kinder to others.
Right.
We're going to not make irrational, impulsive decisions around toilet paper or whatever else, but yeah, that's what happens psychologically when we get into hysteria and panic mode, is we get into desperation and then just impulsively react.
So it's obviously a good time for toilet paper sales, and all those companies, they're winning. But okay, so I want to end this by saying, please look at our resources if you need it. They are going to be there. Please feel free to use them. Direct message Mandy and I on Instagram. You can find me at AdeLA Music. And Mandy, what is your Instagram?
My Instagram is at Peace of Mind LPC. And same content is also on my Facebook, Mandy Morris LPC. So whichever platform you choose to view content on, they're both there.
And Mandy and I have a shared Instagram. It's super simple.
Yes.
It's just AdeLA and Mandy. And you can shoot us a DM there. You can drop in the comments. Like, we want to make this obviously a weekly show. So if you want to drop in the comments and just kind of tell us, like, hey, I'd love to hear more about, I don't know, Mandy, what would they love to hear more about?
Creative blocks.
Creative blocks, or panic, or how to get through
Yeah.
depression, or, you know, any
Yeah.
of those things, drop it in the comments below. And thank you guys for tuning in. You know, my motto, always be kind to each other. Mandy, this was really great. I learned a ton
Oh,
of
great.
things, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you, AdeLA.
Bye.
Bye.